In the quiet sun-washed village of Mboma, where children chase goats through red dust alleys and elders tell stories under moonlight, lived a woman named Amina. She was known for her strength, her kindness, and the way she carried her home with grace. Amina was married to Kwabena, a man everyone respected. He was the village schoolteacher, always dressed in clean shirts and dusty shoes, full of wisdom and calm. People often said they were the perfect couple. Their love seemed like something from an old song, simple, deep, unshakable. Together, they had a daughter named Zulai, a bright-eyed, curious little girl with wild hair and a laugh that could melt even the sternest heart. Amina adored Zulai more than life itself, and Kwabena doted on her with a quiet tenderness. They lived in a modest clay house, shaded by mango trees, where laughter echoed through the walls, and the scent of stew filled the air each evening. Neighbors often looked to them as the example of what a happy family should be. Women in the market would say, "Amina is blessed," and the men nodded, admiring how Kwabena always walked beside her, never ahead. No one could imagine a secret hiding behind their smiles. But behind that gentle love, behind the rhythm of their daily life, there was something buried, something no one saw coming, something even Amina had no idea was quietly waiting to surface, tucked in the most unlikely place. Their world, so perfectly woven, was about to be pulled apart by a thread she never knew existed, and it would all begin with a single, strange message hidden in a shoe. One quiet morning, as the sun rose gently over Mboma and birds chirped outside the window, Amina was doing what she always did, tidying the house with care. She picked up a pair of old, dusty shoes belonging to her husband, Kwabena. They were tucked beneath the bed, forgotten and worn. As she shook one of them out, expecting maybe a pebble or scrap of paper from the schoolyard, something unexpected dropped to the floor. A folded piece of parchment, old, yellowed at the edges, and sealed with a smear of red wax. Her heart skipped a beat. She looked around the room, everything still. Slowly she opened the fragile note. The words hit her like a storm. "The child is not safe. If you still care, meet me where the Baobab bleeds." Amina stared at the message, her hands trembling. The words were written in hurried, uneven strokes, as if the writer was scared or running out of time. Her breath caught in her throat. "The child," she whispered, thinking of Zulai, her sweet daughter. What danger could possibly be out there? And what did it mean? The Baobab bleeds. She clutched the note to her chest. Amina said nothing. She folded the parchment carefully and tucked it into the folds of her wrapper, acting like nothing had happened. But inside, her heart was beating fast. She smiled when Kwabena came home, served him dinner like usual, listened to his stories about the school children, and even laughed at his quiet jokes. But her eyes never left him. She watched the way he moved, the way he spoke, even the way he avoided looking under the bed where the old shoes had been. Something was off. And now, Amina was no longer just a wife. She was a quiet storm gathering strength. That night, after putting Zulai to sleep and pretending to be tired, Amina lay still in bed with her back turned. She could feel Kwabena sitting on the edge, slowly putting on his shoes. Her eyes snapped open. The shoes, the same ones, the ones she had found the message in. Her breath caught, but she didn't move. She listened as he crept out, careful not to make a sound. She waited a few minutes, then slipped out from under the covers and peeked through the window. There he was, Kwabena, walking fast, his body tense, disappearing into the darkness with only the moon casting a silver light behind him. Amina's mind was spinning. Why those shoes? Why sneak out in the middle of the night? And most of all, what did he know about the warning in that note? The man she had trusted with her heart, the father of her child, was walking into the night with secrets. And Amina, quiet but burning inside, knew she had no choice now. She would follow him, no matter where this path led, because something was wrong, and she was going to find out the truth, alone if she had to. Amina waited until Kwabena was far enough ahead before slipping into the night, her feet moving silently across the dirt path like a shadow. The moon hung low, casting pale light on the road as she followed him past the edge of the village and into the old forest where children were warned never to wander after sunset. Her heart pounded with every step, but she kept going. She had to know the truth. After what felt like forever, she saw him stop at a large, twisted tree, the ancient one the elders called the bleeding Baobab. Its bark looked dark and raw, as if it had been wounded and never healed. Locals said it wept red sap when danger was near. From the shadows, Amina crouched behind a cluster of rocks. Then she saw her, a woman, tall and still, wearing a red shawl that seemed to glow under the moonlight. The woman stepped out from behind the tree and walked toward Kwabena without hesitation, like they'd done this before. Amina held her breath. She couldn't hear everything, but the words she did catch made her blood run cold. She doesn't know. The daughter. She must be protected. The secret. It's been too long, Kwabena. And now, the danger returns. Amina's heart twisted. Daughter? Secret? Danger? Her mind raced. Were they talking about Zulai? What secret had Kwabena kept from her all this time? And who was this woman in red, who spoke like she knew their lives so deeply? Amina's eyes filled with tears, but her jaw tightened. She had trusted him with her world, and now he was standing beneath a cursed tree, whispering secrets with another woman. Something was terribly wrong, and whatever it was, Amina was now part of it, whether she was ready or not. The next morning, Amina could barely hold herself together. Her thoughts were spinning, her chest heavy with questions she couldn't answer. But there was one man in Mboma who seemed to know everything about everyone. Baba Diko, the oldest elder in the village. People said he remembered stories that even the wind had forgotten. Amina walked to his home with slow steps, her heart pounding louder with every knock on his wooden door. When the old man opened it, his eyes looked at her like he already knew why she'd come. They sat under the shade of his kola tree as she carefully mentioned the name she had overheard, Nehanda. At that, Baba Diko's face grew tight. He looked around, as if the trees might be listening, then spoke in a low, trembling voice. That name, he said, comes from a time Mboma has tried to bury. Before you married Kwabena, he was a different man, living in another village, Niasi. Amina leaned closer, her hands trembling in her lap. There was a woman there, Baba Diko continued, named Nehanda, fierce and beautiful. She and Kwabena were in love, but something happened. One night, that village, it burned. Screams filled the air. The trees lit up like firewood. Many died. The survivors never spoke of what truly happened. Amina's eyes widened. And Kwabena? He fled, Baba Diko whispered, disappeared into the forest. We heard rumors that a child survived, that Nehanda vanished, and that Kwabena carried a secret no man should carry alone. The air around Amina felt colder. A past massacre, a lost love, a child, a secret buried for years, now rising like smoke through her peaceful life. And suddenly, Amina knew whatever was coming had already begun. That evening, Amina waited for Kwabena in the quiet of their home. The sun had dipped low, casting long shadows across the floor, and the silence between them felt louder than any words. When he stepped inside, she didn't greet him with a smile or ask about his day. She simply looked at him and asked one question. Who is Nehanda? Kwabena froze. His hands, which were still dusty from work, slowly fell to his sides. He looked into her eyes, and something inside him cracked. He sank into the nearest chair, covering his face with his hands, like a man who had been running for far too long. I never wanted you to find out like this, he whispered, but I owe you the truth. Amina stood still, heart pounding. Kwabena took a shaky breath. Before I came to Mboma, I lived in a place called Okuramba, a royal village hidden in the mountains. Nehanda was the princess, and we were in love. But Okuramba was attacked, burned to the ground. I barely escaped. I thought Nehanda had died. He looked up. his eyes full of sorrow. Months later, someone left a baby girl at my doorstep. No name, just a charm around her neck, the royal seal of Okuramba. I raised her with you as Zulai, but Amina, I think she's not ours by blood. Amina's breath caught. The girl she had carried, loved, raised, was not her own? And even more, Zulai could be the last of a royal bloodline long thought lost. Kwabana's voice trembled. If the wrong people find out who she truly is, they'll come for her. And in that moment, Amina realized her daughter's life was not just hers anymore. It belonged to a forgotten kingdom and a dangerous past. Days passed, but peace never returned to Amina's heart. And then, the whispers began. At first, just murmurs from market women, then louder talk among the elders at the well. People were seeing things. Dark riders at the edge of the forest, cloaked in black, riding horses that made no sound. Chickens were going missing. Goats found dead without a trace of blood. Children cried at night, saying they saw shadows standing outside their windows. Fear started crawling through the village like smoke. Amina tried to stay calm for Zulai's sake, but inside she was unraveling. Every creak in the floor, every rustle of wind outside, made her heart pound. She knew this wasn't just gossip. Something had been awakened, something dangerous. And it all pointed back to Zulai, back to Nehanda, back to Okuramba. Then one morning, while sweeping the front porch, Amina spotted something half buried under a stone, folded carefully, almost like it had been placed there for her to find. Her fingers trembled as she picked it up and unfolded the parchment. The handwriting was sharp and rushed. "She's alive, but for how long?" That was all it said. Amina stared at the words, her breath caught in her throat. Who wrote it? Who was watching them? And how did they know so much? She looked toward Zulai, who was sitting under the mango tree humming a lullaby to her doll, completely unaware of the storm swirling around her. Amina now knew one thing for sure. Time was running out. The shadows were closing in, and whatever secret they had tried to bury with silence, it was clawing its way back to the surface. And this time, it would not be quiet. Amina didn't wait another day. That night, while the village slept, she packed only what they needed: some clothes, a little money, and the charm Zulai had worn since she was a baby. She wrapped her daughter in a shawl and whispered gently, "We're going on a journey, my star." With one last glance at the home they had built, Amina slipped into the shadows and began the long road to Zanbasa, the city where no one knew them, and maybe, just maybe, they could disappear. But Zanbasa was not the safe haven Amina had hoped for. The city was loud, crowded, and full of strangers. They found a small room in a back alley, hidden away from prying eyes. Amina tried to blend in, taking small cleaning jobs while Zulai stayed inside. But it didn't take long before the shadows found them again. One evening, as Amina returned from work, she noticed a man in a dark coat across the street. The next day, a woman lingered near the market, pretending to sell fruit, but her eyes followed Zulai too closely. Then, one night, someone tried to force open their door. Amina barely held it shut, her heart pounding as heavy footsteps ran off into the night. In the crowded streets of Zanbasa, Amina found an unexpected ally, Choma, a quiet but passionate city historian known for uncovering stories long buried by time. When Amina nervously approached him with bits of the mystery she had uncovered, Choma's eyes lit up with recognition. Together, they dove into dusty scrolls and faded manuscripts hidden deep in the city archives, searching for answers. Days passed as Choma pulled ancient maps and fragile documents from the past. Then one afternoon he handed Amina a brittle, yellowed parchment, its ink barely legible but the message clear. It told the tragic story of Queen Marindayo, the fierce and wise ruler of Okuramba. Betrayed by her own generals, she was ambushed and murdered beneath the very tree they called the Bleeding Baobab. Her blood, the legend said, stained the bark forever. But what stunned Amina most was the proof hidden in the margins. Genealogies and royal seals, linking Zulai directly to Queen Marindayo herself. The little girl she had raised, the child she thought was just her own, was in fact the great-granddaughter of a queen whose kingdom had been stolen and erased from history. Choma looked at Amina with urgency. This changes everything. If Zulai is the last of that bloodline, then the danger she faces is real. The ones who betrayed the queen are still out there, desperate to keep her secret buried. Amina clutched the parchment tightly, her mind racing. The bleeding Baobab wasn't just an old tree, it was a silent witness to a royal murder. And Zulai, the girl playing quietly in the city's shadows, carried the weight of a kingdom's lost legacy in her small hands. Suddenly, the past was alive again, and the fight to protect her daughter was only just beginning. Amina knew that hiding in Zanbasa was only delaying the inevitable. The truth was waiting for them back in Okuramba, the place where history had been buried beneath lies and silence. With Zulai by her side, she returned to the village she once feared, now ruled by the very traitors who had betrayed Queen Marindayo generations ago. These corrupt leaders lived in comfort, while the village's people suffered, their hearts heavy with fear and betrayal. But Amina was no longer just a frightened wife. She was a mother on a mission, carrying the future of a kingdom in her arms. Standing tall before the gathered villagers, she demanded justice, not only for Zulai, but for the memory of Queen Marindayo and all those who had been wronged. The air was thick with tension as whispers filled the crowd. Some dared to question the old stories, others dared to hope. Then came the ancient ritual, revived after years of silence. Under the watchful eyes of the village elders and beneath the branches of the bleeding Baobab, Zulai was declared the rightful heir. The ceremony was powerful. Songs rose into the sky, drums echoed the heartbeat of the land, and the crowd erupted into cheers and tears. The truth could no longer be hidden. Kwabena, once a man running from his past, was honored for protecting the child and guarding the secret through years of danger. The villagers saw him anew, not just as a teacher, but as a guardian of hope. And Amina, she became more than just a wife. She was the fierce mother who fought for her daughter and rewrote the story of a forgotten kingdom. In that moment, she changed everything, her courage lighting a new path for Okuramba's future. If you found Amina's story powerful and inspiring, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing tales. Remember, courage and truth can change even the darkest past. Never be afraid to stand up for what's right.